Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of CCWTX Chats. We have some special guests here with us today. We are going to be talking about, since it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we're going to be talking about sexual assault on college campuses. So I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves. Narita, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. Narita Holmes. I work at UT Permian Basin, where I'm the Title IX coordinator and assistant compliance officer. I also have an added benefit. I'm a faculty member. So I have immediate touch with a lot of students, and I think that's a real advantage for being able to help them in this particular area.
Awesome. Thank you. Becky, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Becky Gardner. I'm from Odessa College. I work for the Office of Student Life and Residence Life. So I have a lot of face-to-face contact with students on a regular basis, with a lot of students on a regular basis. And I serve as kind of the support staff for the behavior intervention team, student services, and our Title IX and conduct office.
Awesome. Great. Thank you guys both for being here today and allowing us to have this conversation. I really appreciate it. So we will go ahead and jump right in. My first kind of question that I want to pose to you guys is, what is one thing that you wish students on your campus understood about consent? And do you think that they understand what consent is? We'll have you go first, Narita.
Okay, well, first, I think it's really important for them to understand the definition of consent. Consent is basically an informed and conscious decision on the part of each of the parties to engage in a mutually agreed upon sexual activity. So when they understand that, each party also needs to understand not only what consent is, but that it can be withdrawn at any time, even if consent was previously given for that exact activity. Consent for one activity does not mean there's consent for another activity. For example, consent to hold hands does not imply consent to kiss.
Yeah.
Consent to kiss does not imply consent for intimate touching. Having consent at one time, like today, does not mean that there is consent in the future for the very same act. It can be withdrawn at any time, even after mutual consent is received when the activity is started. And I think there's something else really important I want to throw in here before I kick it over to Becky. We also need to remember that there are some times when consent cannot be given. Such as when the person is incapacitated. Very often we run into alcohol issues or illness or similar situations. The amount of alcohol that can cause one person to be incapacitated can be very, very different from the amount that would make another person incapacitated. There can be a whole lot of factors that go into consideration here. How much food the person ate. Did they eat before? How long ago before? Were they eating while they were drinking? What type of alcohol were they drinking? How fast did they drink? Was it over a period of hours or was it very quickly? What is the person's weight? These are all questions that when we're doing sexual assault investigations, we have to ask, because alcohol is so often a factor and is being consumed either prior to or during the period of time when the sexual assault occurs. So those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. We talked about it in our last video, how consent, just plain flat out cannot be given legally if you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And I think that's such a really important thing for people to remember. Becky, okay, so what about there at Odessa College? Do you think people understand what consent is? I know you guys have done some events to try to raise awareness, and that's great in the past. So what do you think?
So something that I would want our students to know is that consent doesn't just have to deal with something sexual in nature, something intimate. It can be, as Narita said, as much as with holding hands or kissing, and that it can change throughout a relationship. And even if you're in a relationship with somebody, a romantic relationship or intimate relationship, that doesn't mean that you always have the other individual's consent. It's on time for time, as there are acts going on, you still need to ask for consent on a regular basis. It's not just assume that you have it because you've had it before.
Definitely. And that's a great point. I totally agree with that. So let's talk about supporting a friend. So, what do you think, or how do you think a student could best support their friend if they find out that they've been sexually assaulted on campus? We'll go ahead and go with you, Becky.
Okay. So it's important to know that you're not always going to understand what they're going through, and that you shouldn't say, "Oh, I know what you're talking about. I know what you mean." Just be there as a support for them to like emotionally like rebound off of, to talk to, encourage them to report it if they can, if they want to. Know that they're not forced to, but it is important because a lot of times the student needs to get some medical attention. If something like that has happened, they need to get tested for certain STDs. Also, if they do choose to press charges, then they need to make sure that they do go through the processes for that. And even for reporting it, they need to know that they don't always have to press those charges, but it is important to seek help for it. And if the friend is concerned and the student's not wanting to report it, they do have the right to report it themselves under our bit information. That way, if they feel like the student's having issues, if they're not themselves, if they might be a danger to themselves or others, they still need to report that themselves. And it's not going to get them in trouble. The student that experienced it, the victim, the survivor, isn't going to be forced to do anything that they're not comfortable with, but they still need to talk to somebody about it.
Okay, yeah, great. And I tell people that a lot when I'm in schools. Like, one of the best things you can do for a friend is just be there, right? It's such a personal experience for someone to go through. And yeah, just being there for a friend is so important. Narita, what do you think a student can do to support a friend who's been sexually
Well, I think this is a really important question. One thing that UTPB does is educate our students on what Title IX is, the actions to take, and resources that are available to them. It's critical for our students to be educated on actions to take if they become aware that a friend has experienced sexual assault. Some of the ways that they can support their friend that we kind of teach them or give to them as examples is to, first of all, encourage them to go to the Title IX office as soon as possible to report the situation, because we can start helping immediately. Go with them as a support person, as Becky was saying, so that they are not going or leaving alone when they go to report. The friend may not be able to sit in on the interview, but they can at least be there for them before and after. Make sure to take time to listen and be supportive, as Becky was saying. Let them know that they're being heard. They may need to talk through what happened. Share resources on the campus. We have posters and brochures all around the campus and online, and sometimes when you're not thinking real clearly when a trauma has occurred, you may not think of those resources, but a friend can help point you towards that resource information. Just being there for them as a friend, as Becky was saying, you may need somebody to stay with them just after the assault, or need to help them get out of their room, or have a place for them to stay for a few days and not be in the scene where something had occurred. Being careful how information is shared and to ensure confidentiality. We live in a culture where students are constantly sharing information on Snapchat, on Instagram, Facebook, and other media, and they should be sure that they aren't spreading private information. That's a concern we always have. Encourage their friend to request Title IX interim measures if they need them. And I know there's a question where we'll talk about that some. I do want to note that our faculty and staff are also trained every year on Title IX. In the state of Texas, we have new legislation that has recently gone into effect that requires that they report issues they become aware of to the Title IX office immediately. Another new provision in the Texas laws provides immunity from punishment to individuals, students, who report. Even if they were present and saw something, they are protected if they will report. These new changes in the law were made to help ensure that sexual assault will be reported. As incidents come to light, they need to be addressed in a timely manner while adhering to due process to ensure that the parties are treated fairly. So that is our job in the Title IX office, if we can get the students to come to us and let us know what's going on.
Great, yeah, and that kind of leads me into my next question. Why do you think that it may be difficult for a student to come to the representatives on campus and ask for help? And is that something that you guys take into account when working with a student who has been sexually assaulted? Becky, I'll let you go first.
Absolutely, we take that into account. When students have been assaulted, they have 1,000 emotions going around in their minds. They're scared. They might be afraid that people aren't going to believe them whenever they report. They're going to, back to the case where if you're in a dating intimate relationship and you are assaulted by your partner, they might not think that people are going to believe them whenever they say, oh, he or she assaulted me, they raped me, I said no. But they need to know that that's not the case. If you want to report it. If you feel like it wasn't right, report it, and we can help you through it. Also, I don't know where I was going with that. Maybe they're ashamed that it happened, that they think that it's something that they could have prevented or shouldn't have done. Narita?
Okay, I'll hop in here. In my role as Title IX coordinator, I'm always aware that there are some myths hanging around out there. And I think that kids are out of their home element, and mom and dad being in control, and they're testing out the things that they can do and cannot do. And this can result in sometimes having some misconceptions or myths about what they should do if something occurs, and they might not actually be expecting this to happen. So it can kind of catch them by surprise. So it could result in them being reluctant to report if there has been a sexual assault against them. So I think listening to them and making sure that we are helping them understand that we really are listening. Like you said, believing them. A lot of students think, well, I'm just a student, I'm just I'm just a sophomore or a freshman, or I'm just gotten here. I don't think anybody's going to believe me. Another thing that is a real problem for us that we run into is if the accusations against somebody who's well known or in a position of power. So if this is a person who is somebody who's known well on campus, or a faculty member, or a staff member that is deemed to be important, or somebody even outside the campus who is considered to be an important person, sometimes because of that power position, it intimidates the student and it scares them into not wanting to report. Another one that I've run into is that if I report, I may get in trouble. If I was there, or if I saw something, or if I was the victim, and if there's alcohol or drugs there, they get scared. They're going to find out that there was alcohol or drugs, and I'm going to get in trouble. And I really think that's one reason why the change was made in the Texas law, to try to give immunity to students so that if they do report, they're not going to get in trouble. Another thing that I see sometimes is that they're scared about what their parents are going to say if they find out. Number one, they don't want them to find out. And number two, if they find out, they're afraid they're either going to be disappointed in them or be angry with them. And so that fear of what the parents are going to think can kind of come in there. Another is that they may think their reputation is going to be hurt if it becomes known that something happened to them. They may be going through that, as Becky was saying, the self-doubt. Did I do something that caused this? Are people going to blame me? Was it I shouldn't have been there, or was it how I was dressed, or was I doing something like drinking or alcohol, or drugs, that people will blame me for. So there's a lot of that self-doubt and being scared about sharing some of that information. And also I find that people think, well, you know, nobody's going to do anything about it anyway. And so why report it, because nothing's going to happen. And so all of those things I think are important things for us to try to help the student understand that those are not necessarily true.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And too, about the victim blaming, right? You know, we get a lot of messages from other people or even from ourselves about victim blaming, but like Becky said, we believe survivors, and it's never your fault. So that's a really great message to kind of get out there. So my last question for you guys, just really quickly, is how can your campus help a student who is experiencing either domestic violence or sexual assault at this time? Yeah.
So
Okay. Becky, go ahead.
So we can help them through the process. We can either help them report it if they want to. We can help them seek the medical attention they need. One of our first calls whenever a student does report is to y'all at the crisis center, because y'all are the ones that are very fluent in this situation. And with experience y'all can like absolutely even help convince them of what they need to do. If they want to press charges, we can help them with that. We do have an actual police department on campus. If they do press charges and they have some sort of restraining order, whether it's with another student on campus or somebody off campus, we can help protect them in those manners, help enforce those. If they need to switch their classes around, we can help them with that. Anything along the process. We also have counseling services on campus. That our LPC can actually help them kind of work through it. She can also refer them to long-term assistance if needed. Pretty much throughout the entire process, we can guide them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Narita.
Well, our Title IX office is there to accept the reports, of course, and we can immediately start helping the student work through the process. Our very first concern is the safety and security of the person who has been assaulted. So we want to address right from the very beginning, let's make them safe and make them secure so that we can help them begin to process and work through what else we can do to help them. We, of course, as Becky mentioned, make sure that they know that they have an option to go to the police department. They don't have to. We can certainly help facilitate that if they want to make a report and press charges. So often we find students who do not want to do that. And so certainly making sure they know the option. We have a lot of interim Title IX measures that we can do, and we have a great staff. There are 3 of us in our office who all hop in there and work with the students, so we can start working with them immediately. We've got a lot of experience in working with these things and a lot of resources. If they live in the residence halls, of course we can help change their location or help them find another place to move to if the residence hall is still scary to them. Luckily on our campus we've got the dormitory, but we also have apartment buildings that are separated from the dormitory, so we've got some options there. It's possible that we may even interim suspend the respondent while the case is being investigated and prohibit them coming on campus. If they're still on campus, we can put in place no contact orders, as Becky was mentioning. Our on-campus counseling is absolutely awesome, and we can provide ways for them to contact those counselors to make an appointment. We also always use our off-campus resources. The Crisis Center is one of our most important allies there. If they're in some classes with the person, we will immediately start working with the faculty to see if we can get one or the other of those students into an alternative educational situation. A lot of people don't understand that when we have online classes, we can still have situations that can occur. It may not be rape, but it can be sexual harassment and other issues that can occur in online classes. And we can also have situations occurring off-site because of the close confinement right now during this time with everybody confined to their homes. There can be domestic violence, partner violence. There can be rape by a partner you're married to. So things like that can occur at home, and we are finding that students are slowly beginning to realize that they can actually reach out to us even though we're in a virtual learning situation now. So we can work with a lot of situations and help those students get back to that feeling of being that feeling that they're safe. And that's really where we want, because our ultimate goal is to help them be successful in their education. And in order to do that, they have to feel safe. And so we want to be sure that we are providing all of the help that we can get. We keep our Title IX staff well trained, and we work closely with our student services side, and we continually promote education. Right now we're working on online education for our students on sexual assault and a lot of other issues, just so they understand we're still here for them. It doesn't matter if we're virtual, we're here.
That's such a great message and such a great way to end this conversation. You know, our representatives from UTPB and Odessa College are here for students all the time, and especially during this time. And I think that's so important to get that message out. So that is all that we have. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I appreciate your presence and your wise words. That is it. We will wrap it up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.